Hey, good morning, mi amigos. Just me and my squeaky chair here this morning. I believe it would be a safe bet to say that most of our audience are fans of road trip adventures. Well, in this morning's program, we're going to inspire winter adventures in the desert, share the story of an adventure that you may not be familiar with, and surprise you with some trivia about transportation evolution in the American Southwest. And of course, I have some recommendations for places where you can wet the whistle after a day of desert exploration. Good morning, Mr. Jim Livingston from Amarillo, Texas. How are you doing, my friend? And we have just another about a minute and a half or so to showtime. So I'm going to try to finish setting up this morning's program. Gives you time to grab your coffee, pull up a chair, and take a listen to the music of the road crew. After this morning's program, take a bit of time to check out their music at roadcrew66.com. Say hello to a new friend. I'd be willing to bet that after listening to a few tunes, you'll be thinking road trip thoughts. Come along for the ride. Jim Hinckley's America. Jim Hinckley's America. So how's everybody doing this morning? Another fine day here. We're starting to see a little bit of a cool down. Hottest summer that I can ever remember here. And according to weather people that have been keeping records here since probably over 100 years, hottest summer we've ever had. Been pretty long and hot, but we're starting to see a downward trend this week. Most all the temperatures will be in the 90s. That's kind of a refreshing change from what we've had. Let's get this thing started a little bit with talking about some desert adventures. We'll start with some ideas for some exploration this winter. And this is something you may not be familiar with, but there's kind of a Route 66 connection to this. For a moderately challenging desert adventure on foot or by bicycle, I recommend trying the 7-mile Mojave and Milltown Railroad Trail in northwest Arizona. The trail follows the rail bed of the short-lived Mojave and Milltown Railroad that was built in 1903, and it connected a gold mine at Oatman, Arizona, with a mill located at the junction with the main line of the Atchison, Topeka, and Santa Fe Railroad at Topak. Due to torrential rains that washed out sections of the track, the railroad was abandoned pretty early, 1904. It's a great hike. I do not recommend this in the summer. I'm an old desert rat. I'm one of the dry roasted nuts who just greatly enjoy the desert. But that Colorado River Valley country proves that you can get too much of a good thing. It's really hot. But you come along in the middle of winter down that direction, you can have a lot of nice 70 and 80 degree days, and ideal for exploring. As downhill hikes are a bit easier on the old knees, I suggest starting at the eastern trailhead off Boundary Cone Road. You'll find a small parking area and a trail sign. And near the sign is a narrow single-track path. And You follow a little trail from the parking lot, about a quarter of a mile, and you'll come to the old railroad grade. You really can't miss it. And you simply follow this toward the river valley. Uh, I'll be posting additional information about all of today's recommended adventures, as well as links for websites that have maps on the Jim Hinckley's America Facebook page and on the Arizona page of our website, jimhinckleysamerica.com. Next up, now I've done a little bit of this. I haven't explored the whole thing yet, but it's on my to-do list, and I'm kind of thinking, especially with the way this year's gone, this might be a good time to just do that. What I'm talking about is the Mojave Road. Is anybody familiar with the Mojave Road? Well, it's part of an old trail system, really old trail system. Um, you need, first of all, to take this adventure, you really need a sturdy 4x4 in good repair. You don't want a search and rescue vehicle. What I mean by a search and rescue vehicle is any vehicle that if you leave town with it, they have to come search for you and rescue you. On the Mojave Road, cell service is a rarity. And I'm going to be blunt. Much of this drive cuts right straight through the middle of nowhere. All the recommendations are that you make the drive as a group. Kind of hedge your bet, and it makes it a little more fun. Shared adventures are always the best adventures. And I should note that this road is really kind of fascinating, and you need about 2 days. You can do it in shorter, but they recommend at least 2 days. 3 is ideal. The road's origins, it's a pre-Columbian trade route that linked tribes on the coast of California with Zuni pueblos in modern-day New Mexico. And I'm going to tell you more about that toward a little bit later here. We'll get into some of the Native American trails. But a number of early Spanish explorers followed this route into California. Back in 1829, Jedediah Smith became the first American to cross the desert on this track. And the road stretched for about 150 miles from Beals Crossing on the Colorado River at Fort Mojave. That's about 10 miles southwest of where Bullhead City is today, to a location along the north bank of the Mojave River where the old Mojave Road split off from the route of the Spanish Trail and the Mormon Road. J.F. Russling described his 1866 trip across the desert this way, quote, "The country as a whole seemed a vast volcanic desert of mountains, canyons, and mesas, and what it was ever made for, except to excite wonder and astonishment, is a mystery to the passing traveler. Water was found at distances of 10 and 20 miles apart." You know, one of the things that's really unique about the Mojave Road is this. It's about a 140-mile drive, and almost nothing has changed from what he described. Beautiful, beautiful, stunning desert scenery. Aside from scenic wonders, there are remains of some military outposts. Mr. Aubrey was a real colorful character. The Aubrey Valley, west of Seligman, along Route 66, is named for Mr. Aubrey. He was a larger-than-life French-Canadian adventurer that traveled the road in the 1850s. And let me give you a little bit of a story if you want to read about a really fascinating character, Mr. Aubrey. When he was 18, he moved to St. Louis, and he saw the profits available for merchants transporting goods along the Santa Fe Trail. And he saved his money, purchased several wagons and draft animals, obtained a line of credit, purchased trade goods, and left on his first trip down the Santa Fe Trail from Independence, Missouri on May 9th, 1846. In 1847, he moved to Independence, Missouri, and began working full-time as a freighter along the trail to Santa Fe, New Mexico. And his exploits were, even then, were just nothing short of extraordinary. And he, for example, one round trip a year, that was pretty much the industry standard at the time. One round trip between Independence and Santa Fe back to Independence. Well, Aubrey pioneered a shortcut, and he began making 2 annual trips along the trail. And I personally would have hated to be his horse, and only can imagine how numb his backside was. But on one trip, he left Santa Fe on December 22nd, 1847, and despite being chased by Indians, highwaymen, and adverse winter weather, he rode hell for leather and reached Independence, Missouri in a mere 14 days. He beat the previous record by 10.5 days. And newspaper accounts claimed his trip was bordering on the supernatural. In 1848, he made 3 trade trips that culminated with a butt-numbing ride from Santa Fe to Independence, Missouri in just 8 days and 10 hours. And if that wasn't crazy enough, on September 12, 1848, he carried a copy of the Santa Fe Republican with news of his departure, and he arrived in Independence on the evening of September 17th, after just 5 days and 16 hours on the trail. That earned him $5,000 in wagers, and I can bet that he rode several horses right into the ground, which is pretty brutal stuff. But you talk about a tough character. Well, after moving to Santa Fe in 1849, he began opening trade routes into Mexico. And in 1852, Aubrey turned his attentions to California and took a caravan with 3,500 sheep, 100 mules, 10 wagons full of supplies down the Rio Grande and Gila rivers to Tucson, Los Angeles, and then to San Francisco. And on the return trip, he followed the Mojave Road, and then he followed a Native American trade route across northern Arizona that Father Garces had mapped out in his expeditions of 1776. And of course, his adventures, Aubrey's adventures, ended rather abruptly in 1854 during a saloon altercation in Albuquerque. The route across northern Arizona would be the one that was roughly followed later by Sid Greaves and Lieutenant Beale's camel caravan when during a creation of the Beale Wagon Road in 1858. And that would become the course for pretty much the railroad, the Atlantic and Pacific, and then the Atchison Topeka Santa Fe. Later, the National Old Trails Road, and of course, Route 66. Now, I've been aware of Native American trade routes in the Southwest for a long time. It's been a fascination of mine on the things that the Native Americans did. We have a tendency to see these in the eyes of the Western movies, and it's just really astounding what was here. But I was working on a research for my community education classes. I'll be teaching at Mojave Community College. Next class is Tuesday night, and it's kind of it's about the evolution of transportation in the Southwest. Anyway, my research really changed a lot of things and added to my understanding, broadened my perspective, if you will, of things about Native American trade routes. Uh, Near Kingman, Arizona, is an old mining town called Mineral Park, and it was the county seat for a while, back in the 19th century, and it's pretty much gone. It's an open pit copper mine now. Well, turquoise is mined in the immediate area, and it has been for centuries. The Cobalt family has been mining turquoise there for a long time. They have a store here in Kingman, and it's a really unique and rich kind of turquoise. And in the mid-19th century, miners found Navajo and Hohokam hammers at some of the old mines, and the Smithsonian did some archaeological work in the area in around 1920s, I understand, there in Warm Springs Canyon, a couple other places. Well, this gets really interesting. Recent archaeological studies and comparative analysis of samples indicate that turquoise from Mineral Park was traded as far as northern Mexico, the Moapa Valley of southern Nevada, western Colorado, and villages in present-day New Mexico, as far over as possibly Gran Quivira. I find that really astounding, just to say the very, very least. That's nothing short of astounding. And the evidence is mounting that pre-Columbian trade was extensive. Macaw and parrot skeletons and feathers from central Mexico have been discovered in archaeological excavations in northern New Mexico, in the Rio Grande Valley, and in Hohokam villages at present-day Phoenix, Arizona. And some of the dates being shot at is around 900 AD for this. So imagine that trade work, that extensive, that trade network. And this is before the Spanish reintroduced the horse. Other goods traded over this trail and network included shells from the coast of California, which would be the Mojave Road, and cacao from Central America. That shows you the one reason the Mojave Road to me is really so interesting, because it's a tangible link to not just American history, Spanish exploration, but you've got a tangible link to centuries of Native American history. But when I was doing my research for these classes, here's the real jaw dropper. Is anyone familiar with Cahokia? This is the largest pre-Columbian city over near Collinsville, Illinois. It's across the river from St. Louis. It's kind of almost like something you see in Mexico, the mounds, and they call them the mound builders. And even St. Louis, they've leveled a lot of the stuff in St. Louis, but when explorers first came, they found this massive mound city on both sides of the river, and Cahokia preserves a large section of remaining. Well, anyway, they've been doing some archaeological evidence at Cahokia, and they have found evidence of cacao from Central America. And there's further evaluation is underway to confirm this astounding discovery. But think about that. Chocolate, cocoa from Central America being traded at villages in Illinois. These folks were busy. Hey, now let's talk about wetting the whistle after some desert exploration, even in the winter. You know, I should back this up. Look, if you're not familiar with desert travel, or if you are, even if it's on the highways, always travel with lots of water. If you don't need it, you might find somebody who does. Make sure your vehicle is in good repair, tires, all the way across the board. Give it a good once-over. Years ago, my wife and I, my dearest friend, we had a annual tradition. We would go out on New Year's and go someplace and do a big hike or something. And one year we were went out and hiked Amboy Crater for New Year's. And it got up to 90 degrees on New Year's out there at Amboy. So be prepared for that. Well, let's talk about wetting the whistle after some desert exploration, or maybe a good bite to eat. Maybe you've worked up an appetite. if you're exploring the Mojave Milltown Railroad Trail, which is 7 miles, my suggestion, stop by the resort at Topok on the Colorado River for a cold one. It is a great little spot, real scenic, nice and pleasant, right on the river. And of course, if we ever get to the other side of this never-ending COVID-19 induced nightmare, you might consider driving back up the hill for a cold beer and a buffalo burger at the old Oatman Hotel in Oatman, Arizona. Always a lot of fun. And probably the top of my list is drive into Needles, California on Highway 95 and order a top-notch meal with a cold beer at Valenzuela's. This place is an absolute hole in the wall, and it looks like a strong wind would probably take it down. It's so neat. Inside, it is an absolute time capsule, and it's one family owned since opening in 1953. I stopped there a while back, and the grandson was the waiter, and I was really privileged. The daughter of the original owner, she's 80-some years old, she's the cook, and they took me into the kitchen to introduce her. The kitchen was surgically clean, and she was excited to show things off. She's cooking on the same grill and stove that was installed when the restaurant opened. It's just a neat place. And if you've survived the rigors of the old Mojave Road, 2 or 3 days in the desert, my suggestion is to treat yourself to a great dinner and a cold beer at Jenny's Mexican Grill in Barstow, California. It might be a good idea to get a motel room and take a shower first. But Jenny's in Barstow is just an excellent option for some good food. Next up, hey, let's give a shout out to this week's coffee cup sponsor. A great stop after a Route 66 adventure or to fuel up for a day spent in search of National Old Trails Road remnants. I stopped there a couple weeks ago on my National Old Trails Road Odyssey, Beal Wagon Road Odyssey. Had a tremendous breakfast. I had the awesome possum breakfast. Other menu items include the rigor mortis tortoise, a one-eyed dog hitting the fog. You may already know this, but Deborah assures me no roadkill is actually used. But it's a great place, Roadkill Cafe, Seligman, Arizona. Okay. If you'd like your museum, business, or community featured on Coffee with Jim, just send us a mug. It's really that simple. But if the budget allows, you might stick a little cash or a check in there. We'll put it to good use. We'll keep the programs going, or maybe we'll do something crazy like buy groceries. If you'd like a more expansive promotion through our multifaceted travel network, we have advertising sponsor opportunities starting at $6.25 per week. Let's see. Before I forget, I want to give a shout out and say thank you to supporters of our crowdfunding initiative and to Miss Connie Eccles at the Wagon Wheel Motel in Cuba, Missouri, sponsor of Coffee with Jim. Without their support, God bless. Telling people where to go would be a lot harder job. Now, Wagon Wheel is the oldest continuously operated motel on Route 66, and it's an absolutely magical place where you can relax and discover what makes Route 66 really special: the people. As a bonus, they have a selection of my books complete with a signature in the gift shop. I'll have to tell you the story sometime how I went to do a book signing after the fact, and the lady behind the counter wouldn't let me sign the books until the manager approved. She just couldn't have anyone stop in and defacing books. The trials and tribulations of being a writer. Let's get into some last minute notes. Don't forget our audio podcast, 5 Minutes with Jim, and Adventures in Automotive History. You can find all 90 plus episodes on the podcast page at jimhinckleysamerica.com. And the latest episodes are posted weekly on the Jim Hinckley's America Facebook page, as well as at motoringnz.com. I write a weekly feature column for Motoring NZ. A lot of fun, and they're linked to the podcast. Kind of a more in-depth situation. A lot of fun there, and if you're a fan of filling your head with useless knowledge, great opportunity. And if you happen to be in the neighborhood and would like to enjoy some neon lit social distancing, as well as a few laughs, contact Desert Wonder Tours and schedule a walking tour in the Kingman, Arizona Historic District with yours truly as the guide. Information and a link to the Desert Wonder Tours website is found on the Arizona page at jimhinckleysamerica.com. And as I noted, I am again teaching a series of community education programs at Mojave Community College. These are via Zoom this year, so you can register regardless of location. Let's see here. The next class is scheduled for Tuesday night, so you still got time to register for that. And let's see here. We'll be talking about Southwest transportation history, sort of what I've been talking about this morning, but we're going to get into railroads and steamboating on the Colorado River, and a little fun with that. And we'll be talking about national trails, Route 66, Native American trade routes, the railroad, all kinds of good things. And then the class scheduled for October 6th, I will be speaking on the era of innovation, the years between 1890 and 1930. And then the class October 13th, I'll be talking about the evolution of Romanticism in the Southwest. How we got to this point, why it is such a so popular with international travelers and everyone. So we'll be talking about the Romanticism of the Southwest. And then we'll be talking about the icon that is Route 66. How the road evolved from being a highway to a representation of America, if you will. And we're getting close to the end here. I don't want to tie you up too long. So my parting thought for the day, before I wrap this up, I want to invite you. I want to thank everybody who showed up today, and I'd like to invite. I'd like to invite you again next week, episode of Coffee with Jim. Invite your friends, and let's make it a coffee party. Let's have some fun. And as you know, I enjoy telling people where to go. I want to share a passing thought. We've got enough negative and just general nonsense in the world right now. Ask yourself this week, today, what can you do to move beyond the divisive and toxic political rhetoric that's the hallmark of the 2020 presidential election? What can you do to get beyond all this crazy hysteria over face masks and nonsense and the stress? Give you a couple of examples of what you can do. Tatiana Smith, she read about a community refrigerator set up in Brooklyn to assist neighborhood families impacted by COVID-19. So she decided that she wanted to do something similar for her neighborhood. She's a software product designer, so she started talking to neighbors, things of that nature, in local restaurants. And so she ended up setting a hot pink refrigerator with a bright blue trim in her carport outside her house with big sign, free food, comida gratis, in Latin along the top. Neighbors help her watch the fridge, and they kind of put the word out. If you're having trouble, your kids aren't getting school lunches. Well, she's not surprised, she said, when the food is gone within hours of her posting it on Instagram. And she's just as surprised that it fills up with food almost as fast. And she says unemployment benefits are ending, and you have people with mortgages to pay. Children aren't getting school lunches. Mothers are having to forego work to home. and it's a snowball effect. And she simply asks people for donations and says, if you wouldn't eat it, what makes you think other people would? And the list of stories is just really impressive. Got a mother down in Houston, Texas. She was offered a computer for her 12-year-old son. She said she had one, but she knew a family that didn't, since a lot of schools are having to go back and forth with remote learning and things of this nature. So she took the computer, refurbished it. She watched some YouTube videos and replaced the battery, the hard drive, and a few things of this nature. And she started programming. And so far, she's collected dozens and dozens of computers. People have donated to have them refurbished, and she's been giving them out to families that have trouble. Another situation in the neighborhood, family have been pooling their resources. A lot of families cannot afford high-speed internet, which creates a problem for kids learning at home. So they started taking up money and paying for internet service for neighbors who couldn't afford it. So what can we do to make a difference in our neighborhood or community? What can we make this a better place? Well, that is a bit of inspiration. Before I bid adios, my friends, I'd like to give a shout out. Of course, we had Jim Livingston from Amarillo. He just had a great grand opening at his visitor center in I Am Route 66 Gallery in Amarillo, Texas. And now if we can get tourism back on our feet. Good morning, Miss Michelle. And Mike, how are you doing? Yes, Michelle, Fort Paiute. I take it that you've had some experience with the Mojave Road. Excellent. Mr. Fennessy, good morning. Glad to see you with us, and I'm glad everybody's feeling better there. Keith, I'm really sorry to hear that. I hope things came there you are. And Lewis Meyer, good morning from the wilds of Kansas. And then we have Miss Maggie May from Michigan, and Harley, good morning from here in Kingman, Arizona. Ken Yowden from Colorado, God bless, good to see you, my friend. Michelle, perhaps you can join me sometime, or maybe you can share a bit about the Mojave Road. I understand you're doing a book about attractions like that, something Howdy Kingman, and you've been working on a project about some of the exciting things to see and some of the history around this area. I'm eager to see that. Before we wrap this up, is there any questions I can answer for you this morning? Anything I'd sure like to, any travel questions, anything I can, I'm pretty handy at telling folks where to go, as you well know. Well, as always, I'm quite grateful that you would join us. Yes, I will get the link up again. It's at Mojave Community College, MCC, and I will get that up. The contact there is Lauren Peterson, Director of Community Education Classes. And as you can see by a couple of technical difficulties this morning, internet speeds. I just talked to a fellow on, he's a website developer, has clients all over the Southwest, back in Maine, pretty big fellow, and I guess I'm not the only one. Internet speeds are being really pushed down because of so much traffic, and it's another sign that we need to really update our infrastructure a tad bit, especially in rural areas. But want to thank everybody this morning for joining us, and I will get those links up today. Podcast should be up, the next episode of 5 Minutes with Jim should be up within the hour. And then we will be off to the races with another busy and fun-filled day. I'll also have the links to the websites and where you can get maps and information about the Mojave Milltown Road, as well as the Arizona Mojave Trail out there. And that Mojave Milltown Railroad, I understand there's you can also use off-road vehicles, and it's equestrian. So that was another question I had there. It's not just a hiking trail. Mr. Tracy, good morning, sir. Well, my friends, I want to really thank you for joining us this morning again. It's always good to see everybody, and if we can't see each other in person, we can at least visit for a few minutes on Sunday morning. And I really don't forget the Coffee Cup with Jim program. And if there's anything, questions, travel questions that you need answered, send me a note. I'll try to get back to you as fast as I can. My friends, thank you so very, very much. I look forward to your next visit. And take care. Vaya con Dios, mi amigos.